or delayed this high school provincial ultimate final.
This is not a playable surface, let alone if you have cleats.
And even more rain has tryouts Tuesday night cancelled.
Every day we have to make a weather call and decide whether or not we're playing.
Baseball fans are also out of luck.
It's been frustrating because typically you play twice a week.
Dan Cox chairs the Winnipeg Minor Baseball Association. He says this diamond in Transcona usually hosts a game every day, but not tonight.
You cannot play on it right now, you'll sink into the ground. And it's a safety issue too, right? You can't, your kids will get hurt, they'll slip and fall.
Over at Lacoste Garden Centre, President Jordan Hebert says landscaping business is down.
Obviously, you get rained out of jobs. You have to pivot and change things up a little bit so your crew's not working efficiently.
But the rain hasn't stopped those with green thumbs.
If you have a wet garden but it's well drained, you should be okay. Your plants won't be troubled by it. They can take the rain, they can take moisture, because it will dry.
And sunny skies are in the forecast. If you're wondering what all these puddles mean for mosquitoes, the city says the wet weather has been challenging for larviciding, but crews are clocking in overtime to get the job done. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
On that note, let's bring in CBC weather specialist Riley Lachuk. And Riley, I was keeping an eye on outside all day, trying to time my walk about when the best time to get outside was. And I feel like we're going to be doing that for the next few days, aren't we?
Yeah, at least the next couple of days, Brittany. I wanted to step back and talk about May for a second here, because some of these numbers are quite staggering. No, not the wettest May on record, but certainly in the top 10 for sure for much of southern Manitoba. Winnipeg, Brandon, Dauphin getting almost double the amount of precipitation, the amount of rain we'd normally see in May. And of course, some of that falling as snow through the Westman region. Thompson, Churchill, both over that 100% mark as well. And if we look at the first 4 days of June, Winnipeg already seeing half of what we'd normally see in terms of rainfall. So yes, we're off to a wet start here in the Red River Valley. And if we look at rain potential over the next 5 days, we're looking at a couple of millimeters, if that, across much of southern Manitoba, but it's the north, Brittany, that we're going to be keeping an eye on. I'll have more on that coming up a bit later.
All right. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
The cost of rebuilding Route 90 from the south end of River Heights to the Polo Park area is now estimated to be $737 million. That's according to a new report at City Hall. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports about the makings of another mega project.
Route 90, one of Winnipeg's busiest transportation corridors, has been earmarked for reconstruction for more than 20 years. A detailed design for rebuilding this road from Taylor Avenue to Ness Avenue pegs the cost of construction at $586 million, plus $151 million in interest charges if the city has to borrow money for the work. Mayor Scott Gillingham, who campaigned for office on a promise to rebuild Route 90, says the project must be done.
Anyone who's driven down Route 90 in that section lately will know that this road is past its end of life.
The project involves widening Kenaston Boulevard, rebuilding the St. James bridges over the Assiniboine River, and replacing combined sewers along this corridor. While there is support on council for some of this work, St. Boniface councillor Matt Allard wants to know what else Winnipeg could build for more than $500 million.
I know you can justify one project, but what about the 1,000 other projects that haven't been looked into, haven't been justified?
A report to council extols the trade benefits of rebuilding Route 90. Minarski councillor Ross Eady wants to know why the design for this road is coming before plans to extend Chief Peguis Trail.
It's clear the mayor's already picked which one of his projects that he campaigned on is going to go ahead first.
The report to council also claims widening Kenaston will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by easing up congestion. St. Vital councillor Brian Mays doesn't believe that.
The cost benefit just seemed to be an exercise in coming up with a positive number. Let's just leave all that aside and the purported environmental benefits and have an honest debate about this.
The Route 90 reconstruction will also require the city to purchase or expropriate 128 properties. The city also has to buy or lease land alongside Kenaston from Treaty 1 nations who acquired the former Kapiong Barracks. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg motorists could soon drive a few blocks over Backman-Turner Overdrive. City Council's Property Committee voted to have city staff consider an honorary renaming of a portion of Disraeli Freeway. Disraeli from Main Street to the Disraeli Bridge could become Backman-Turner Overdrive. The honorary name for the Winnipeg Rock Band would remain for up to 5 years. Another council vote is required because Disraeli is a regional street. City councillors responsible for property decisions have endorsed a plan to expand the West Kildonan Library when money becomes available. The city abandoned a plan 2 years ago to knock the building down. A new study found it will cost up to $11 million to modernize and expand it. Council's Property Committee voted this morning to endorse that plan by adding the West K Library to a list of future projects. Winnipeg police say a child was sexually assaulted at a school playground in the North End. Police say the elementary school student was with another child on Sunday afternoon in the playground on Flora Avenue. A stranger made sexually explicit comments to the kids, then grabbed one of the children and touched her in a sexual manner. She broke free and the children ran home and told an adult who called police. School officials have been notified and will be following up with parents and caregivers about a safety plan. The forensic psychiatrist hired by Jeremy Skibicki's defense team told the court he has schizophrenia, but Crown prosecutors are questioning those reports. CBC's Cameron McLean has the latest.
Dr. Shahom Das told the court he diagnosed Jeremy Skibicki with schizophrenia, and he believes that motivated him to kill 4 women. Skibicki is charged in the deaths of Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and a 4th unidentified woman given the name Mashkode Bishike Ikwe Iban. He pleaded not guilty, and his defense argues he is not criminally responsible due to mental illness. Das says he based his diagnosis on 2 assessments of Skibicki and a review of his medical records. The British psychiatrist says Skibicki showed signs of paranoia, racism, and grandiose delusions, some of which was on display in Skibicki's videotaped confession.
First one, it was just kind of like, just hatred and disgust.
Das told the court, he informed me that he believed that if they were not subservient to God, he felt compelled to physically destroy them. But the Crown prosecutors questioned the records Das used to base his diagnosis on, and noted 3 different psychiatrists assessed him and did not diagnose Skibicki with schizophrenia. They also pointed out that the doctor did not talk to Skibicki about a letter sent to another inmate where he wrote that he planned to plead not criminally responsible to get away with it. The trial is expected to continue tomorrow. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
As you heard, the defense team in Skibicki's trial are arguing he should be found not criminally responsible. But what does that mean, and what are the consequences for the accused? CBC reporter Caitlin Gowerluck explains.
The defense in the trial of Jeremy Skibicki is arguing he should be found not criminally responsible in a Winnipeg courtroom this week. Skibicki is charged in the 2022 deaths of 3 First Nations women: Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, as well as the death of an unidentified woman given the name Mashkode Bishike Ikwe Iban by community leaders. So, what does not criminally responsible mean? And what consequences can it have for the person accused? Let's start with the definition in Canada's Criminal Code, which says, a person cannot be found criminally responsible for an act committed or an omission made while suffering from a mental disorder that rendered the person incapable of appreciating the nature and quality of the act or omission, or of knowing it was wrong. CBC talked to Brandon Trask, who's an assistant professor of law at the University of Manitoba. He said there are 2 things you need to prove in a not criminally responsible case. One is that the accused had a mental disorder at the time of the offense, and the second is that they have to prove that that mental disorder made them either unable to understand what they were doing or that it was wrong. Here's how he put it.
You know, if somebody's experiencing delusions, you know, specifically in the context of more of a paranoid schizophrenia, for instance, you know, that individual may have an easier time making the case that they should be found NCR because what they were doing was essentially not their own choice. They felt that they had to act in a certain way because they were receiving instructions to do so.
So what's an example of a case where not criminally responsible was successfully argued by a defense team? In a case that is seared in the minds of many Manitobans, Vince Lee was found not criminally responsible in the killing of Timothy McLean. McLean was beheaded in an unprovoked attack on a Greyhound bus near Portage la Prairie, Manitoba in July 2008. Psychiatric evidence at Lee's trial showed he's schizophrenic and suffered a major psychotic episode when he fatally stabbed McLean. Lee spent years in different psychiatric clinics and supervised homes before getting a discharge. Trask says after someone is found not criminally responsible, it can play out in a few different ways.
If there is a finding of NCR in Canada, essentially the court, reaches a determination that yes, this individual was NCR. That individual will then appear in front of the Criminal Code Review Board. So every province has a review board, and people who are found NCR, and also those who are found unfit to stand trial, end up under the purview of the review board. And so the review board will have hearings on at least an annual basis with respect to every person who's been found NCR.
How likely is it then that Skibicki could be found not criminally responsible? A forensic psychiatrist I spoke with shed some light on that. Dr. John Bradford has assessed a number of high-profile Canadian killers like Paul Bernardo, Russell Williams, and Robert Pickton for not criminally responsible. Here's what he said about those cases.
It would be very unusual for any type of serial sexual homicide perpetrator to be found not criminally responsible on the basis of mental disorder.
What he says next about the reason why could be the clincher in Skibicki's case, given that the Crown is arguing the killings involved a high level of planning.
But they involve a lot of planning and organization. They have to find a victim, they have to persuade them and abduct them, and they have to go to various means to do that. And then usually afterwards there's some disposition of the body in a way to avoid to avoid being arrested or being found guilty. So in those general terms, if you stay within those parameters, it would be very unusual for somebody to be found not criminally responsible.
Time will tell whether the not criminally responsible argument in this case will be successful. Once the trial wraps up, the judge will rule on it.
Three trustees at a Western Manitoba school division have quit just days after the superintendent was fired. Stephen Jadek was terminated as superintendent at Mountain View School Division on Friday. That was followed by the resignations of three trustees, Floyd Martins, Scott McCallum, and Leafa Misko. Misko says they tendered their resignations on Monday.
Not all voices have been appreciated, respected, or welcomed at that board table. It came to a time where it was no longer effective to remain sitting at the board table.
The board chair says Jadek was removed as superintendent because he wanted a change to his salary. The province launched a review of the division in April after trustee Paul Coffey raised questions at a meeting about funds for reconciliation initiatives, saying, among other things, that residential schools were, quote, good. The province tells CBC that review is still underway. Shared Health is on a mission to cut administrative costs. In the last few months, it's ended more than 50 contracts with external vendors, saving $7.5 million annually. This is part of a broader effort to reduce bureaucratic costs at the Provincial Health Authority. Around 24 non-union administrative positions have been eliminated. 10 people were laid off. The rest were shuffled to other jobs. That restructuring will save around $1 million. A First Nation in Northern Ontario is suing the federal and provincial governments over mercury contamination in a river flowing through its territory. Grassy Narrows First Nation says the governments did not meet their obligations to ensure community members could practice their right to fish safely.
The people of Grassy Narrows have suffered enough. The future children, the grandchildren that are coming behind us when I'm long gone, we want a good future for them.
The lawsuit claims the government allowed the river to be contaminated, then failed to address the problem while authorizing harmful industrial activities. Community leaders say the matter would have been handled differently if another segment of the population had been affected. The lawsuit is seeking several measures, including an order that the governments protect the river and Grassy Narrows territory. The lawsuit also calls for the prohibition of industrial land use on or near the territory that would infringe on treaty rights. The RCMP detachment in Manitoba's biggest northern city has 13 vacancies. That's according to a policing report presented to Thompson's mayor and council last month. The regular roster for the detachment has 38 positions, but the current vacancies include 4 administrative positions, an inspector, a staff sergeant, and 7 constables. Mayor Colleen Smook says with the transient population in the northern hub and the large service area, demand for RCMP services is high.
When you're down 13 members between staff and office workers, it just means there's a lot more overtime. It's a lot more burnout. We go through more members that, just go to other places because it's less of a workload.
In an email to CBC, an RCMP spokesperson says the police service faces challenges with people retiring and transferring. Don't feed bears on the side of the highway. It doesn't help them, it only hurts them. It's a message conservation officers are trying to get across in northern Manitoba. It comes as a mother bear and cub have been spotted near cars on Highway 391 north of Thompson. The furry family has been reported to be too friendly with people who are giving them food.
If people want to help the bears, and everybody wants to help wildlife, there's better ways of doing it. You could, keep our forests clean, keep things cleaned up along the roads, places like that. And if they want to help, they're better off to donate some money to different user groups out there.
He says if people stop feeding the bears now, they will eventually move on and become self-sufficient in the forest. Riley is back now for a look at weather. And Riley, we've been talking about that rain. We've been inundated the last few days. If you stepped outside this morning, you surely got soaked. I was waiting it out, trying to see when I could get out there. What are we looking at for the next few days, though?
Well, we're looking at some scattered showers, at least here in the south, Brittany, but it's the north that is going to be really taking the brunt of the rain. I wanted to step back and talk quickly about how muggy it was today, because it certainly was a muggy one out there. Having a look at the dew point temperatures from the afternoon here, these are really high up there in terms of dew point for southern Manitoba. You can see this brighter area here in this sort of blue-green color here, 17s and 18s through the Interlake and much of the Red River Valley. Not as muggy back to the west, but certainly where we have seen some of that active weather is where we've seen some of those very sticky conditions. And on the scale, yes, that's borderline muggy to uncomfortable. Tomorrow we'll be down more into that comfortable, pleasant 10 to 13 degrees once again. So a bit of a taste of summer for a day here. Looking at watches and warnings, it's been a very active weather day into northwestern Ontario. That's where we'll start because we still do have a tornado watch in place for the Dryden area. We did have some warnings in place earlier for the Lake of the Woods area, south of Kenora, north of Rainy River, over toward Fort Francis, where we have seen some very strong thunderstorms, and we're still seeing thunderstorm warnings into northwestern Ontario, into Saskatchewan, just on the border here along Roblin, Swan River up to the Paw. We have a weather advisory for the possibility of funnel clouds. This should dissipate as we get into the evening hours tonight, but we also have a rainfall warning in place for the Hudson Bay coast. Wind gusts to 80 kilometers an hour, and we could see up to 80 millimeters of rain, which we'll get into, and we'll time that out for you in a second. Here's that line of thunderstorms that push through northwestern Ontario that really did pack a punch as it moved through the region through the afternoon hours today. That corridor between Kenora and Dryden really seeing some very heavy rain throughout the afternoon today. For the rest of us, though, that scattered shower activity really did move off to the east, but we'll see that kind of wrapping around as we get into the overnight hours here. And you can see by the time we start the morning, we're back into a mainly sunny sky, but there's that precipitation that has moved up into northern Manitoba. So tomorrow, the north, Thompson around through the Hudson Bay coast, really getting the brunt of that system as we head through the day on Wednesday. Could see some more instability, maybe some scattered showers in the south as we head through the later afternoon hours again. And into Thursday, that rain and precipitation continuing across the far north, while we enjoy sunnier conditions here in southern Manitoba. So timing out the rainfall, at least here in the south, looking at a trace to maybe a couple of centimeters in some of those scattered showers. These numbers here into northwestern Ontario taking into account the possibility of thunderstorms. But it's these numbers here I really wanted to show you in northern Manitoba, especially when you get into some of these oranges and reds along the Hudson Bay coast. The potential for up to 65 millimeters in Churchill, 20 to 40 for places like Thompson and into the Norway House region. So tonight in Winnipeg, we're looking at a mainly clear sky. We're starting to see some clearing as we head through the evening hours here tonight. 16 first thing in the morning. The story tomorrow here in the south, the winds with the possibility of a thunderstorm, west winds gusting to 60 and 21 tomorrow afternoon. And looking at temperatures staying fairly seasonal, and Brittany much brighter as we get into the weekend.
All right. Thanks so much, Riley.
You're welcome.
It's being billed as a Grey Cup rematch. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers kick off their regular season Thursday night when they host the Montreal Alouettes. Winnipeg lost to the Owls in last year's championship game. The Bombers have lost some of their veterans who've been to the last 4 Grey Cups. Head coach Mike O'Shea doesn't see that as a bad thing.
It's always interesting when there's fresh blood and a new perspective. I think it's nice when an older vet gets to listen to how a young guy sees it and gets to stand back and watch as they go through things for the first time. I think that's certainly can get the juices flowing.
Shea says the Bombers still have a very talented core of veterans who want another championship. Coming up, are some Canadian MPs acting as agents of foreign powers? A new parliamentary report has some alarming allegations. The details when we return after this short break. Canadian MPs are facing new questions about foreign interference into politics here, after a new report suggests some MPs have conspired with foreign governments and shared sensitive information with them. No one is named in the report, which is raising its concerns about trust on Parliament Hill. Rafi Boudjikanian reports.
Justin Trudeau's cabinet has been preoccupied with foreign meddling for months, but typically they've not had to address their own caucus colleagues' potential involvement.
The allegations contained in the report are extremely serious. Anytime you have a suggestion that our democracy is being undermined, it has to be taken very seriously.
That's a concern for all of us, regardless of caucus, regardless of party.
That, as a new report by a committee of politicians with security clearance tasked with intelligence oversight says parliamentarians semi-wittingly or wittingly helped foreign states interfere into politics here, some accepting funds or benefits from foreign missions and their proxies, and providing privileged information to foreign diplomats, and in one case to a known foreign intelligence officer. The report also said China and India have interfered in conservative leadership races, providing no specifics.
We know that China and India are interfering in our democracy and are using members of parliament to do so. A Canadian is dead because India allegedly sent assassins to murder him in Surrey, BC. Yet, the Conservative leader refuses to condemn India's Modi, and the Prime Minister has failed to protect our democracy. How will this Prime Minister take this matter seriously and hold these foreign governments to account?
The very creation of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians has allowed us to see a lot more and to make sure that all parliamentarians are aware of what the intelligence community is doing to keep Canadians safe. We will continue to do everything necessary to protect Canadians.
One opposition leader has an idea, saying every caucus should ask each of their MPs whether they may have been involved, even inadvertently, in foreign meddling.
I can only say that if we came to the conclusion that one member of my caucus would have been involved in such activities, he could not remain part of the caucus. That's clear.
The governing Liberals would not make that commitment on Tuesday, though Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland did say her party would be conducting an internal follow-up of some sort. For their part, the Conservatives say they never got any warning from Canada's spy agency CSIS about foreign interference into their last leadership contest. Rafi Boudjikanian on CBC News, Ottawa.
Canada's Auditor General released a new report today slamming the federal government for disregarding its own procurement rules. It found Ottawa awarded more than $200 million worth of contracts to a single firm without much, if any, competition. Olivia Stefanovic reports.
At least one contract.
Canada's Auditor General sounding the alarm over $200 million worth of federal contracts given to a single consulting firm, McKinsey & Company.
Federal contracting and procurement policies exist to ensure fairness and transparency and value for Canadians. But they only work if they are followed.
Karen Hogan found those rules routinely broken in 97 contracts awarded to the New York-based global management firm.
We also found that each organization's own practices often did not demonstrate value for money.
The contracts were handed out between 2011 and 2023 for a wide range of issues, including IT support, scientific research, even health and welfare services. Hogan's audit shows most of the contracts were not awarded through a competitive process, and 6 appear to have been designed to favor McKinsey specifically.
Will the Prime Minister commit here and now no more money for McKinsey?
The opposition is seizing on the Auditor General's scathing findings.
Why do these Liberals show such affection for McKinsey but such disdain for Canadian taxpayers?
When will they start respecting our public service and stop forking over money to rich consultants?
Will the Prime Minister finally ban McKinsey from government contracting?
This isn't the first time the government has come under fire for outsourcing.
Speed to procure.
Hogan recently scolded the government for the controversial ArriveCan app, concluding that its final cost impossible to determine due to poor financial record keeping.
We're committed to protecting the integrity of procurement and expect public servants and all departments to operate at the highest standard and prioritize value for money for Canadians.
So why didn't that happen with McKinsey? Well, the Auditor General says procurement policies may be too onerous as they are. So there's no need for more rules. She says the public service just needs to follow them. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
One of the men charged with the murder of a Canadian Sikh activist, Hard-singh Nijjar in BC, was arrested months ago in Ontario. He was detained just one day before many prominent Sikh separatists gathered for a wedding in Brampton, just west of Toronto. The federal government has directly linked Nijjar's killing with the Indian government. CBC's Evan Dyer has the details.
Of the 4 men charged in the murder of Sikh leader Hard-singh Nijjar, one stands out. Amandeep Singh, yet to enter a plea on any of his charges. Arrested months before the others on the eve of a high-profile wedding that brought together a number of big names on the Government of India's enemies list. Police seized this pistol, which had an extended magazine and distinctive coral snake engraving, similar to a pistol he had in this video posted to social media last year. It's not clear where or when the video was shot, and Singh's lawyer told CBC News he had no comment on it. Police have never said what Amandeep Singh was doing in Brampton, but he doesn't live there all the time. That weekend wedding last November had a notable guest list.
You would refer to them as probably Sikh leadership across the country, especially those that are involved in the Khalistan movement.
Moninder Bol is a Khalistani, or Sikh separatist, who was a close collaborator of Hard-singh Nijjar.
Now it seems like there's a lot of dots that could be connected for that weekend.
One of those invited was Gurpatwant Singh Pannan, an old friend of Santokh Singh Khela, father of the groom. Pannan is presumed to be India's #1 target. He lives under tight security in New York since U.S. authorities accused Indian government officials of trying to kill him. At the last minute, Pannan cancelled his trip to the wedding.
I come with a lot of liability. I did not want it to, weigh them under my security threats and bring in, all that attention which I bring in when I go and join it.
The host says that since the wedding, he's been visited by CSIS and told to take precautions. He and the others have no illusion that the danger to them has gone away.
There will be more teams, there are more people running around or everywhere, we are not scared from them, scared out all of them, we're not afraid from the die.
While the exact events of that weekend may only emerge at court, Sikhs who've spoken to CBC News say they don't believe the timing was a coincidence, and they also don't believe the government of India has given up on its intention to kill them. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
Farmers across Europe are staging demonstrations ahead of EU elections later this week. Dozens of farmers blasted the horns as they rolled their tractors into central Brussels, parking in front of the European Parliament. Hundreds from across Europe are protesting with the support of right-wing political parties and organizations. They say low food prices, excessive regulation, and free trade deals have them struggling to compete with cheap imports. New EU environmental laws are a key target of the protests. Rocket attacks by Hezbollah militants have sparked major wildfires in northern Israel. High heat, low humidity, and changing winds are driving the flames. The fires have burned about 400 hectares. There are reports that a number of homes have been damaged or destroyed. Much of the region had already been evacuated because of escalating hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah militants based in southern Lebanon. Coming up, turning school grounds into a food forest. Kids at a primary school in Nova Scotia hit the dirt while learning more about food sustainability. That story plus, Riley is back with your Manitoba forecast after this break. Stay with us. A primary school in Nova Scotia is using a new project called a food forest to teach kids about food sustainability. A garden on the school grounds, which is run by a nonprofit, produces fruit, herbs, and other edible plants for the community to enjoy. The CBC's Nicholas Sagan paid a visit.
After weeks of growing tiny seedlings, this primary class at Bluenose Academy got to hit the dirt, planting sunflowers, nasturtiums, and calendula, more edible flowers to add to the food forest.
I like scooping up the soil.
Run by a local nonprofit, the first trees were planted last year, and now the food forest is thriving.
There'll be pears, apples, cherries, plums, rhubarb, lots of berries, strawberries, blueberries, and so on.
The produce will go to the school cafeteria, and in return, the cafeteria's waste is used as compost. But it's not just feeding the kids, it's helping them learn.
It's such an important lesson for little students to start thinking about science and how everything is interconnected. So even from talking about parts of the seeds, parts of the plants, what happens when they're planted, what plants need, and how then care for them.
What kind of things did you think you learned from planting?
Being kind to the plants, yeah.
And did you have to be really gentle?
Yeah.
How did you be gentle with the plants?
We holded them carefully. She holded them, I scooped the soil.
The project isn't just for students. The food forest is open to anyone in the community who wants to pitch in. And Quilty says it's not just a regular garden.
A food forest is an ancient way of growing food. It's been around for forever. People have been working with nature to grow food, but it's a perennial-based food production system.
The food forest is called neighbourhoods, a Mi'kmaq word that means the sun is shining over us. Sean Feener chose the name and says the project shows Mi'kmaq teachings at work in the school system.
Right now they're planting, they're creating that place, and in the future they may be harvesting because they've gifted the space, the time, the food, and those beings are gifting something back.
And as the kids pat their seedlings into the dirt, they'll wait and watch them grow, hoping to soon enjoy the fruits of their labor. Nicholas Sagan, CBC News, Lunenburg.
Riley is back. And Riley, I love how tender and soft and caring they are with those plants. And I'm sure there's a lot of people here keeping an eye on their plants with all this rain we've had.
Yes, with all the rain we've had. And we're going to be talking about some pretty windy conditions tomorrow, Brittany. Maybe not the best weather late afternoon for a dog walk, but we'll show you that right now. I actually have a trio of, a trio of animals, let's put it that way, to show you tonight. Tika, Trofast, and Rasmus the cat. Thank you, Margaret, for sending these in. I know you sent this picture in a while ago, Margaret, but that's just how many pictures I've had lately. So thank you for sending that in. Talkback@cbc.ca is where you can send your pictures to. I always want to see them. Possibility of some thunderstorms as we head through the afternoon hours tomorrow, but it's the winds that are going to be the story, and that's what we'll talk about in just a second here. Looking at daytime highs from today, seasonal across southern Manitoba at least, 22 for both Winnipeg and Steinbach, 20 in Brandon, but the heat and of course that active weather into northwestern Ontario, 28 this afternoon in Fort Frances. So looking at your wind forecast for Wednesday, onshore flow from Hudson Bay really going to bring some pretty chilly wind conditions to Churchill, gusting up to 65 first thing in the morning, even some gusts up to 80 by the time we hit the 9 o'clock hour. Here in the south, westerly winds pick up as we get through the afternoon hours. So by the time we hit, say, 3, 4 o'clock, we're into those west winds, 40 gusting to 60 across the south, even some sustained winds as high as 40 and 50 across the Westman region as well. So we'll see some clearing skies as we get through the evening tonight. So a partly cloudy sky tonight through the Westman region. Maybe a few showers and some thunderstorms through the Stoff and Swan River region, 12 overnight tonight in Winnipeg. And then we start to see the rain start to move in to northern Manitoba overnight with some fog potentially along the Hudson Bay coast. Could see some pretty dense fog in Churchill overnight tonight with a low of 0 overnight. Rain through the day tomorrow through Thompson and north. That rain does push further to the north and back to the west as we get through the day. So we're looking at a high of 3 in Churchill tomorrow, 16 with a good chance of showers showers in Norway House. Mainly sunnies to start the day tomorrow in the south, and then we start to see a little bit of instability tracking through again. So Dauphin through the Clear Lake, Brandon region could pick up some showers through the morning into the afternoon. And yes, Futurecast here indicating the potential, at least, for some scattered showers and maybe even some thunderstorms once again through the Red River Valley. By the time we get to the late afternoon, that risk of thunderstorms, Brittany, extends into northwestern Ontario as well.
All right, Riley's going to be keeping an eye on that for us.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Every 5 minutes, someone in this country has a stroke. They have devastating impacts on Canadian families and can change lives in a second. But do you know what the signs are and what to do and help save someone? More on that straight ahead. If you or someone you love was having a stroke, would you be able to recognize the signs? According to the Hard-singh Stroke Foundation, not enough Canadians could. Catching the signs and acting quickly can mean the difference between life and death. Christine Hood is a director with the Hard-singh Stroke Foundation and joins me now. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Brittany. How are you?
Good, thank you. So this is the 10th anniversary of the Foundation's FAST campaign that many of us know. It helps ensure people know what those key signs are. So for those who don't, take us through what those are.
Great, thank you. So June is Stroke Month. So this year, Heart and Stroke is shining a light on the FAST signs of stroke. And as you said, it's been 10 years since FAST has been in the community. So FAST stands for face, is it drooping? Arms, can you raise both? Speech, is it jumbled or slurred? And T is for time to call 911. And we really want people to know that call to action for calling 911 is critical, because when it comes to stroke, time is brain.
Yeah, one of the things we really want to highlight is if you think you're having a stroke, you should be calling 911. You shouldn't be messing around and driving yourself or having someone drive you to the hospital, correct?
Absolutely. When a stroke occurs, as I said, time is brain. And once a stroke starts, 1.9 million brain cells die every minute. So every second is critical. And we know that when we call 911, paramedics are going to assess quickly, and they're also going to make sure they take you to the right hospital. Not all hospitals are equipped to treat stroke. There are some great treatments available, but not all hospitals can provide that. So it's critical that paramedics will take you to the right hospital, and on the way, they're going to notify the hospital that you're coming. So again, that's going to save critical time. And you compare that to driving yourself and all the delays that you might experience. So it's really critical that people call 911 when they are experiencing, or someone is experiencing the signs of a stroke.
We know with that FAST campaign, it's been around for 10 years, but still the recent results say 3 in 10 Canadians can't name any of those signs, and newcomers and ethnically diverse groups are significantly less aware. Are you surprised by that?
Well, I think we've seen some positive progress as well. You know, in the last 10 years, we started, one of the measuring sticks that we use for our polling is how many people can name at least 2 of the signs of stroke. And back when we started 10 years ago, that number was less than 2 Canadians could name at least 2 signs of stroke. Now we've got that number up to 4, which is better. Here in Manitoba, we're doing quite well. That number is actually closer to 5. But to your point, yes, still 3 in 10 Canadians don't know any of the signs. So we do have some work to do. We have noticed in the polling that groups, newcomers, for example, have a lower awareness. So we do need to work with communities in terms of finding ways that we can get this messaging through.
And before I let you go, we're seeing a rise in strokes among younger adults. We're also seeing women being impacted significantly more as well. What is contributing to this, and what do people need to be aware of?
Yeah, so we have seen an increase in numbers of stroke. Here in Manitoba, there are over 3,500 strokes happen every year. So that's a lot. And we also know that the prevalence is increasing as well. Over 36,000 people in Manitoba are living with stroke. So there are a number of things. Certainly we have an aging population, and that's leading to an increase in stroke numbers. But there are also risk factors at play. High blood pressure is the #1 risk factor for stroke. And we really want people to, know your numbers. A healthy lifestyle is an important thing for preventing heart disease and stroke. And all of these things are really important.
Make sure you know that acronym and practice it, and practice what you preach. Christine, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, she's still forever your girl, and she's coming to Winnipeg this fall. 80s pop superstar Paula Abdul hits the stage at Canada Life Centre on October 10th. Her Straight Up to Canada tour also brings you music icons Taylor Dane and Tiffany as her special guests. Tickets go on sale this Friday.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned. And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
Wanted to quickly show you what's happening on radar because we're seeing a little bit of instability, some thunderstorm activity moving through the area around Bonito, just outside of the Swan River region. But sort of the main event still off into northwestern Ontario under thunderstorm warnings and a tornado watch. You can see this pretty volatile line of storms that is still making its way through northwestern Ontario. We'll see that sort of fizzle out as we get through the overnight hours tonight. 16 to start the day in Winnipeg tomorrow. Note the winds though, southwest 30 gusting to 50 by noon and west 40 to 60 by the afternoon with some scattered showers, potential for some thunderstorms as well. And then we start to enter a bit more of a drier pattern and temperatures returning to more seasonal by the time we reach the end of the weekend. Well, it was a bring your kid to work day that one U.S. congressman will never forget.
And neither will anyone else on Capitol Hill. Here's your Daily Lift.
Justice system to engage in a politically driven prosecution.
Republican John Rose was first to speak on the House floor yesterday, but it was his 6-year-old son who stole that show.
Well, his father gave a 5-minute speech about Trump's criminal conviction. The little guy sat behind him, squirming in his seat while making funny gestures and faces. Afterwards, Rose went online to say this is what he gets for telling his son to smile at the camera.
It's almost as if I kind of get up and do the whole little the bunny ears. I can't do it. The desk is in the way.
I love it. He's having fun while he's there with his dad. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.